Are people born wicked? Or do they have wickedness thrust upon them? You're green.
I am.
Welcome, new students, to Shiz University. Miss
Elphaba.
You can room with Miss Galinda.
Oh, popular. I know about popular. Oh, I saved you some space, by the way.
Do you really think this is fair?
I do not. I was promised a private suite. But thanks for asking.
Please, everyone take your seats. In today's Oz, a real sorcerer who possesses true magic has become all too rare.
Absolutely remarkable.
That was you who made all that happen. How did you do it?
I don't know. I've never known.
You, come with me.
Of course.
Not you. You. You're the one the wizard has been waiting for.
Galinda?
Ew.
I know. It's my granny's. I'd give it away, but I don't hate anyone that much.
Hey.
You should join us tonight. And don't tell me you have nothing to wear. Because you could wear this.
Something has changed within me.
She doesn't give a twig what anyone thinks.
Something is not the same.
Of course she does. She just pretends not to.
The wonderful Wizard of Oz summons you to the Emerald City. Come with me.
What?
To meet the wizard.
I couldn't possibly. This is your moment. I'm coming.
The great and terrible.
Something bad is happening in Oz.
The best way to bring folks together is to give them a real good enemy.
You have no real power.
That's why I need you.
Don't let her get away! This wicked witch.
Don't be afraid.
I'm not afraid. It's the wizard who should be afraid of me.
Hello and welcome to this BFDG podcast. I'm Jonathan Paul Green, chair of the BFDG, and today I'm talking to production designer Nathan Crowley and set decorator Lee Sandales, the multi-award-winning creative team behind Wicked. Before we start, let me tell you a little bit about the British Film Designers Guild. We're a growing community of over 600 amazing creatives and production designers working across film, TV and commercials. The Guild has been around for more than 75 years, originally set up to raise the profile of the art department and support its members. And those values are very much at the heart of what we do today. You can find out more by going to britishfilmdesigners.com. So welcome, gentlemen. It's a real pleasure to have you guys here to talk about Wicked, which has obviously massively captured the public imagination. Let's start right at the beginning. When you were, Nathan, when you were first offered this job, what were your early visuals like? And do they have any relevance to how the design ended up?
Probably not to the end of the answer at the end of the question. How did it start? We both were, myself and Lee, were coming off Wonka, and I sort of had a strange sort of call from Mark Platt and John Chu, saying they were set up in Atlanta. Well, this project's been set up many times, but they were very keen in getting it to London and moving it to London and hiring someone, designer for London. So we just came off Wonka. We kind of switched over to Wicked. So I think it was really John Chu. I flew out and spent 3 days with John Chu in LA, really just trying to understand his point of view. Because you grow up with The Wizard of Oz every year at Christmas. It's sort of part of my DNA. Wicked less so, but I have 3 daughters, so there's obviously a Wicked element. And then John Chu's sort of push towards this sort of colorful, whimsical approach. And I think sort of the essence of it was trying to tiptoe into a design that respected The Wizard of Oz and Wicked, but belonged to the new project. And I think that is where it was a long journey, to say the least. From everything from the Emerald City across to Munchkin Land, really had to be redesigned and really in a handmade way. What I knew definitely that if we were to do this, I really wanted to push against visual effects, push as hard as I could. Obviously, there's masses of visual effects in this film, but if I could push against it and make a sort of more handmade, physical set version of it, I knew I could touch on the nostalgia if we got the designs right of The Wizard of Oz, and then I knew the audience would accept it. But the actual journey to find the designs was massive. And then the realization of Wicked pushing on The Wizard of Oz, and it's an origin story of the witches and, the Wicked Witch of the West, Wicked Witch of the East, the Good Witch of the North, and it's their origin stories along with the Tin Man, the Scarecrow, and the Lion. And you get this sort of collision of these two great projects right at the end. And I think that makes it a massive film and really hard to get the design correct on. I mean, so it's finding all the things we didn't want to do in answer to your question to begin with. Sorry, that was a bit long.
No, that's fantastic. I mean, we kind of touched on the kind of the visual legacy of The Wizard of Oz. So I guess question to Lee, how do you kind of acknowledge that history and the nostalgia that audiences will have of something that existed so many years ago? And how do you kind of reimagine that whilst trying to, retain some of the truth of the original?
Well, we had concerns, and what Nathan never told me, or maybe what we didn't realize, was when we were given the script, we read the script. All I knew it was just one script, so you kind of assume it's just one film, and no one ever told us it was going to be 2 films. We knew it was in 2 parts, and of course I read, essentially the first act, and then suddenly it was like it ended on, that it can't end there, and then so you turn over, and then there was the second act, which then actually concludes in the most amazing way. And of course, the language of the script and the stage show, which I knew the stage show, and I had seen it, and I was a huge fan of it. There was iconic sets like the Yellow Brick Road and how to grasp onto that, and of course in the first part of Wicked, you don't see the Yellow Brick Road, but in the second part, you actually do. We basically just needed to find what Oz was. And no one really knew what Oz was. And, John always told us he wanted to be able to feel us, smell us, touch us, to have Oz under his fingernails. And he pulled us all around him, and he got us all to believe in what Oz could actually be. And I think because of John, he gave us kind of a safe place to actually just be creative and to find it. And we had just enough time to explore and just enough time to find all those answers. And I think because of John, we could find a true Oz. It has echoes of the original film, but also it projects it into the future of what it can actually truly be.
That's really fascinating, and it kind of leads me into a question about collaboration, and you've kind of touched on it, and how you begin to work with a director and producer and even cinematographer, and those sort of collaborations are so key and crucial to how a production ends up being. How did that process work for you, Nathan?
Well, it's hard because this I'm myself and Lee were joining a team that had worked together before on at least two projects, maybe more. Alice had been on for many projects, so it's hard to be the sort of new kid in the classroom. And but John, I mean, as Lee said, John has this sort of warmth and welcomeness, and he creates this, as Lee said, this safe place. So I always felt. I felt very comfortable expressing myself in, I mean, at the beginning, like I said, it was things I don't like rather than what I did know and processes. And, methodology runs very strongly with design for me because they hold each other together. And so, and I think John wanted that for me to push against the usual way of doing things and maybe go back to an older way. So we actually got very close to everyone. I mean, I can actually say after both films, I'm so close to all our heads of department. In fact, I saw the film with Paul Taswell, and it was like we looked at each other. We were just alone in the cinema a few weeks ago, the Wicked for Good, and we said, "God, I miss this." And we kind of miss each other. And it was a bond that John created. And yeah, we of course we push and pull. I mean, for instance, like growing 9 million tulips and trying persuading people and studios to do that and holding fast. It was very difficult, and but ultimately, I think instinctively, what you have to do, and this was very important to me, and actually it became very important to everyone. Once we got through the initial thing of people saying, "What do you want to do?" We're not doing that. John was, of course, quiet because he wanted to do it. So once we get it's a sticker shock thing. You just have to like get them used to the process, and then they became part of it. And now it's part of everyone's sort of remembrance of the film, and it became this publicity thing. It became something else, and I would say that was for lots of elements in Wicked. And to be cheesy, I think everyone changed each other for good.
Well, it's true because it's kind of like I think at the start it was you always feel like a child, trying to learn a language, and by the end of it, you're fluent in it. And we all spoke Aussian, and Mark Platt always knew what he wanted us to be, and he had such faith in Nathan, he had such faith in John to bring this Americana to the whole thing. And I remember standing with kind of Nathan, and Nathan said, was like, we're gonna have to stop building like furniture, what was this? But of course, we had to just find the foundation stones first. Like, so it had to be based in like a reality. And Shiz was the first thing which we actually looked at, and Nathan had created the most amazing pieces of architecture. And I was just accenting it. But even for me, it was just John really gave us the space, and he really believed in what we could actually do, even though at the start we were trying to find the path. And once we all got on it, and Nathan talks about Paul, honestly, I remember walking into the costume team and Dulcie Scott and seeing that world of the costumes, and that was such an inspiration. Then I started realizing actually we're going to create worlds here. And the film got, to be in my eyes, bigger and bigger and bigger. We were making something really special.
Yeah, I think once we got there with John and we found the path, we were on many paths that led to many different sets and many different parts of Oz. But once we found a few with John, the great thing about John is he hadn't even really started yet. And once we found a path, he then was like, okay, now we're going to go and I'm going to do these dance numbers, these incredible dance numbers, and I want to do this. And that's what I love about him. He lets you find it. and then he makes it his own and he puts what he loves into it, using every other department. And it was, I mean, I still remember in the cinema for Wicked One when we do one short day and we go to the fountain to Wizard Mania to that dance, and I knocked my socks off seeing that dance. I mean, it was just like it was just an extravaganza, and it belonged in true old MGM musicals. And then it finishes with Stephen Schwartz saying, "The wizard will see you now," and it's just like that. And then we're into intimidation. It was just like it was. I'm waiting till you see the next one.
Oh, I mean, I think what's really apparent to me is just seeing how happy you are talking about your project and remembering it with such fondness. I think that really tells such a great story about the collaboration between so many departments, and how that then creates such a magical project when everyone's on the same page and working towards the same goals. And I think it's so lovely to see, and it's oozing out of you. And what a fantastic time you had on that project. But talking of collaboration, Lee, so I know the two of you just came off of Wonka before you started Wicked. How does your collaboration work with Nathan? Obviously you've got some sort of shorthand going now because you've worked together before, but talk about that sort of process.
Well, Nathan will create like a space, and we'll actually talk about it, and he also gives me a lot of time and like a lot of space to actually find where we need to get to. And actually, when it came to Wicked, and of course, the first thing I said to him, I said, "You never told me it was two films, it's like part one and part two." And we were finishing off kind of Wonka, and then we had the short gap, and then Nathan had actually sent me like the lookbook of where we're going, and I was like, "Oh God, this is going to be huge. This is like, where do we go from?" But the first set which we started with was actually one I would say one of the smaller sets, which was actually the girls' bedroom in Shiz. And I remember saying to Nathan, there's no straight walls, it's all curved. And the ceiling's curved and everything's curved. I'm like, I can't find curved furniture. And so, but we leaned into it. And I could find amazing pieces. I think we found a Venetian sets of like chest of drawers, and we leaned into Anglo-Indian, and but we found this amazing language that would fit within the space that Nathan had actually created, like creating Shiz, creating Noz. It was actually the smaller space, but it was most important because it was the space that actually defined the two heroes, Glinda and Elphaba. And it was like, we have to start here, pink and green. And I really thought, okay, we've now got the other room actually sorted. And we created it was like a part build where the set was actually laid out with like just wood chip walls and flooring and stuff for John to use as rehearsal space. And I think this is coming back to Nathan's point where John would elevate it. We were standing in the room, actually, Nathan, right? It was like a Monday morning. He said, "Can you be here at 8?" I said, "Yeah, sure." We got the and John went, "Right, I want to talk about popular." And we were like, "Okay, yeah, we'll talk about popular." And then he just came up with this choreography, this number within the space that none of us had actually realized. And then I really thought, oh, we're on this amazing path. This is way beyond what I thought. And yeah, and then that was the moment Popular was born, when we stood in that room, and there was nothing in it because we didn't have anything. But then we found it, and so working with Nathan is special. He gives you like challenging spaces, but you learn to make them super special.
I mean, I'm going to add to Lee because what Lee does for me is he really looks at character and he looks deeply into character and comes to me because, as a production designer, you get lost in the whole and the big story points and the big collisions in these stories. And sometimes you need to be checked for character. So Lee comes with his boards into my office and we sit down and I'm running at 90 and I've got about the attention of a flea, which is only slightly better than Lee's. And and uh, and he sort of pushes me back into the space. And I think I mean, it's a great technique. We go into the workshop, we tape it all out, we look at everything with the furniture in it, and we discuss it. And we need to just slow down and come back to it and find it and look at the dance and just we have to. We're like detectives. You have to look at what the thing is, why it is it like this, how it's going to work. So you really have to sit with it and be still. And I think that's really important. And we come off Wonka, which was not the first time we worked together. We actually worked together on Dark Knight.
Yeah.
But it was a musical, and we did start to understand what that world was. And we really thought we pushed it on Wonka, but we had no idea where I think we needed Wonka to do Wicked, to be honest, and Wicked to do Wicked for good because.
Yeah, I think that's true. I think, you know, for like the both of us, it's like, it's always reinforcing what the story is, what the character is, and Popular is the perfect example of that because, it's pink and green and trying to find both kind of characters' spaces and that was the first set which we shot and it was the first sequence. I was thinking, we've got the rest of the movie to do. And I think what I learned from that was like always reinforce story. Always.
Yeah. And the thing about that set, the reason it was this sort of egg shape, I've been looking actually for the governor's mansion. I went down to Brighton Pavilion, down to the palace there, the crazy Indian Chinese palace by the regents, the Regency. Forgotten his name. Anyway, um, uh, and I'd been in one of the top of the onion domes, and it was this circular room with these teardrop windows. It's like, okay, this could be Shiz. This could be in the onion domes of Shiz, and it could work. So we built this set so it was always interesting because we spent two song numbers in there. We had a lot of time in there, so it's like we've got to make every inch of this interesting to camera. Otherwise, the audience we're gonna lose them, visually. And then I added a huge corridor on the outside, and luckily at that stage with production and construction, it's like we're just going to put this corridor. There's no scripted scenes in this corridor, but it's the first set, and we have to lead our actors into the space and show them what Shiz is because they've not seen anything. We can't just go into an onion dome and say, "Hey, good luck." And I remember thinking, oh, the producers are going to kill me here because I've built this 100-foot curved corridor with decoration that has no use. And then John was just fantastic. He goes, "Oh, this corridor is fantastic. I'm going to use it," and he did. He ended Popular out in the corridor, and I think that's a very important thing to know. I mean, there are techniques here at work. The first set, especially if you're new to the group, you have to gain everyone's trust with the first set you deliver. That means you're going to have to do more than expected, and you're going to have to spend more, which is also harmful because you have to make it up somewhere else. And so you really got to concentrate on the first set because once you get the confidence of everyone, you can move smoothly and you can do your job. And so that was key. I mean, it was difficult starting with a small set, I felt. So.
That's fascinating insight into, the workings of how you take on a job and start it off. And I kind of want to just briefly, before we get into actual specific sets, just talk about your kind of visual inspiration. Where do you get I think people would love to know where you get your inspiration from when you're starting out a project like this.
Well, I work with my wife, who's my concept designer. So we sit in a room actually just downstairs and we try and bounce ideas off. So I kind of look at the whole. Okay, what is Oz? Oz is this green island in the impassable desert. Like, what is the desert? And so you start landing those questions. And we have a big chalkboard downstairs. It's like, what is Oz? It's an island. So how does that play story-wise? It plays like it's because there's nothing else out there. It's a big loss if you have to leave it, which is a story point, and there's no place like home. So, okay, that's a story idea. How we visually show that is something else. And then I'll move into Emerald City is like, okay, I'm just going to touch that and then I'm going to park it. Like what I do know, The Wizard of Oz is I do know I've always, since I was a kid, I wanted to go into the backing. I wanted to go into the backing and see it for real. I don't want to cut to the door with a guy opening a hatch saying, the wizard will see you. Or I want to walk in there. And what is that? I have a lot of architectural reference I use. I needed to find a key for that. So I spent a lot of time in Chicago making 4 films, and I've always been fascinated by the White City from the 1903 exhibition. So I always knew it needed to be as amazing as everyone talked about the White City, that when they went there, it was this it was a dream. It's like, okay, the Emerald City has to be the dream of the White City because it's gone now, it burned down some years later. But and then that has always sat with me as this amazing place. The great American modernists started there, Louis Sullivan, Burnham and Root, all of them. And we know the other thing we put on the blackboard is an American fairy tale. So we have to key into that. So we have to key into Americana. We have to key into Andrew Wyeth paintings, landscapes, Days of Heaven. We have to have that going on. So these are the things that sort of turn around my brain, and then and then there's Munchkin Land. I'm parking shiz up here because it's like, okay, I have to mix. The only way I can see of doing this is to mix every type of architecture I love and see if I can find a way through it. Munchkin Land, well, that's a harder job. But then myself and my wife came up with this idea that, okay, I'm sorry to go fast, but I do it. So what is the Grimmery? Now we have Wicked coming in. What is the Grimmery? It's an ancient book that no one can read anymore because those times have gone. So to me, it was like, okay, the Grimmery is the time of the land. So, and it belongs to the earth and it belongs to nature, and that's what Elphaba represents. And then the time of harmony is Shiz, the time when animals and Ozians, everyone lived in peace. And the time of the wizard and the Emerald City is now, where the story takes place, and it's the time of conflict. So then I could start parking architecture in these. So Chiamico, the ancient seat of Fierro, as Fierro's family, sat as far west as Oz would allow you, with a little bridge that it was pulling against Oz. And so that belongs to the Grimmery and has magic it has magic and will become the Wicked Witch of the West's castle. And it faces the impassable desert. And this is the place you don't want to have to go. And weirdly, we sort of talk about that for The Wizard and I, because The Wizard and I is Elphaba's original dream, going to the cliff, looking at the impassable desert at Shiz. But she's not looking at Emerald City. She's looking at her future, which is the impassable desert. So, and then that's where the sea comes from, because we had to make it beautiful for The Wizard and I. So then it has to be white, and it has to move in the wind and feel like a beautiful sea. But in Chiamico in film 2, it's not a friendly place. So those, and then you start hanging your ideas. I knew the White City, I knew Chiamico, I knew Shiz has to be. I knew design-wise, I knew I had to go on location, so I knew I needed rivers, and there's a sort of backstory to that. Is how do you get anywhere? There's no yellow brick road yet. How do you get to Shiz? You can't go by car, can't go by hot air balloon because it belongs to the wizard. Train belongs to the wizard. And so what have you got left? Horses, you can't do horses and carts because the animals are free. So you're left with rivers. So then it was like, okay, I'm just going to go look at the Seven Sisters on the south coast of England because it's so beautiful. And then, I can imagine Shiz over here. But then I want to go through an arch, and design-wise, I use arches to frame us. for practical builds. I always try and frame the practical build with an arch. So because it always works. It keeps you on set. It's like a frame. So you know that's how it's very organic and nothing set, nothing really. We don't really stop anywhere. And when we don't know, you just know you park it and let it sit. Um, and I know with the great thing about practical building is you don't, once you get to that illustration, right or wrong, you present it, it doesn't matter because I've got 12 weeks to build the set and I can change it all the way through that 12. That's the art direction period. And people forget about that period. It's 12 weeks of change. If you have the right construction crew and the right art department and the right set deck department, you can treat it like a piece of sculpture. And if your instinct tells you where to go at the right time to make sure people are going in the right direction, then I think it makes you a fluid designer or set decorator. That's what excites me is all the shops and going around going. I mean, with our shops, it took us all day. We'd open the set and then spend all day going around the shops because there's so many. And it was two films, and it was like, oh my God, like I haven't got to Lee and it's 3 p.m.
It was strange because when I first saw the visuals that Nathan had actually come up with, it was the first thing I saw was the gate at Shiz with the Seven Sisters actually in front of it. And it was like, to me, it felt like the entry to a world. And the last set, which we ended with, was actually the Emerald City. And it was the hardest set to find because, as Nathan said, it was the time of human. It was the time of the wizards. The dark times were actually coming, and it's everything that we're actually talking about. It's about a process. It's kind of like, and the process never stops. It continues. You can sometimes land on like an answer, and I guess you learn to be um if you hang on to something, you can let things go. You'll always find like a better answer and allow yourself to explore it and going through like I guess I'm less sentimental. Like if something like if it's not working, just put it down, take what's good about it and exaggerate it. And we found that like particularly in like the Emerald City, where it almost became its own thing. It's kind of like we didn't realize that as we were doing it, it became like this almost like particularly in part one, it has this playful kind of element, but it almost becomes sort of like an amusement park with like and at the center of it is this stage show, and as Nathan says, there's this vast piazza of like endless shops and like libraries and like bars and what I found was the process of what we all do, it continues. The process never ends until the camera turns over. You still have a chance to add and change and make it better and better and better. And I really believe that's what we did with that set. And the result is when you first actually go into it and you see Wizardmania, which I remember at one point it was being conceived as like almost a fairground ride, and it ended up this most amazing stage show. Francis, who did the hair and makeup, and Paul costumes with Dulcie. I mean, honestly, it was. I actually stood there and like, I
The
mean,
yellow bird outfits. I mean,
yeah.
it's just beautiful. It works, and yeah.
And I know we've spoken about practical effects versus VFX, and I know, Nathan, you're very keen on physical and practical builds. Is the motivation budget, or do you think it just sits better with the actors on set? What's your thinking behind that?
I just love things that move. I'm just a kid. Ever since I saw James Bond in Leicester Square and the bookshelf rolls back, it's like I anything that moves and you can turn on as part of the action. So you sort of trump the set with it, and then it's a delight. like the bookshelves. It's like, okay, I'm going to turn on the book, Fierro, Dancing Through Life. So it's like, of course, the bookshelves. I mean, it's nothing new. Fred Astaire did it. Like
But not at that scale though, Nathan.
yeah, with three rings that moves independently. It was like, um, I think anything that moves, I'm fascinated by. The puppeteered head was driven by, I want it to talk to me. And so to find special effects found Paul the puppeteer who animated the face, and then it was a big journey. And the curtain that Lee had to do couldn't just be a curtain because it's kind of dull. It's like so it had to be straight. I'd seen at the Deer Beaker Art Gallery up here north of New York. There's a string. It's a minimalist art gallery, so there's string art, and it was like, what if the curtain was string? I think Lee looked at me. What do you mean string? But then he took that on, and then it was 12 foot deep with string, different colored greens. And then you could then push the face and the eye through the curtain. And it's like, I am Oz. And I want that moment when I was a kid where I jumped behind the couch, and it's like, and also I need the actors to feel the same way. It's about, I want them it was just, you could watch that puppet for hours. So
It was quite the feeling of the space. You felt intimidated when you actually walked into it, which is exactly what Nathan really wanted it to be. And everyone who walked into the space, I mean, it was an extraordinary set. I mean, I can't explain what the architecture was above it because, it's like Nathan's thing. But when I walked actually into it, and the head was there, and the curtain and the strings, which was basically like this veil. It was like a veil, and it was sinister. And it was just like, and when the head actually pushed through it, and it was, and I'm Paul Corbold who actually built it, and Chris who was the operator. It had a personality. It just felt like there was someone in the room with you. And when you stood there on your own, it was quite frightening. And I really didn't want to jump behind the sofa.
But we ask a lot of our teams. And so Paul Corbell and his team did all the mechanics, the Crystal Puppeteer. Chris Peters, the art director, had to get, the wizard's face, and we had to find the right tone of wood and the burl wood relates to deco, so we touched the past, the 30s Hollywood, so. And we can't do it without that team. So, and luckily I've worked with everyone for years, and I trust them. Like Paul Corbett was on the beaches of Dunkirk with me, so I just obviously for the film, not the actual real event. And so I feel like but we're a team, and the art department are a team, and it's I think there's something to talk about there. You have to be as one and move as one, and that means you got to look after people. We have to look after construction that often are not looked after, and the set deck. That means no. I'm just going to say no stupid tents out in the parking lot. We need proper facilities. We have to fight for these things. Get construction coffee if they're out in the snow in the cold. Get them. Life is simple. People will do anything for you if you just treat them well. And it's something I feel like producers don't understand. And it's like, can we? They don't know. They don't know these mass of people. We are bigger than the shoot crew, and we can move effectively. And John Chu teaches you this. He treats everyone properly, and I think there's something we all need to learn from that. It spreads from him down.
Yeah, totally.
Absolutely. It's good to hear.
Yeah, I would spend like every morning going to Ben's office where we'd sit down and have a cup of tea, and then Nathan would actually come in, and then Kate would then come and join us, and the four of us would just actually sit down and we would just work through our day. And then, we would get up, and then I'll go to my side, and Nathan would go, and then we would just weave our way through, the day. And I have to say, what Wicked did, and I have to say, is the team, coming back to what Nathan said, it was an exceptional team of amazing people, and the collaboration it was just it was just amazing. Went to work every day and I had this buzz. Like you could feel the buzz around the offices. Everybody was loving it. Everyone was enjoying it. And as Nathan said, it did come from John, but then it came from Nathan. It came from Ben. It came from Kate. It came from me. And we and the relationship actually between everybody worked. Like props, Jamie Wilkinson. It was just amazing.
I think that's such a great lesson for, for anyone on a production to hear about. It is so important. It's not just about what the end product is, but it's how it's made and how it comes together. It's so crucial.
But it's also like, I only really work with Paul Hayes. I've never so many decades. And it's like there's a shorthand. Obviously, Mark Seath works alongside him, or Will on Wonka, but it's like you need these people are key. Like construction are everything, and we need no negativity. We need positivity.
Mm.
Same in the art department. I felt like I call the art department, that includes set deck, by the way. We're on one long room. It's
Totally.
like we need positivity, and you've got to allow everyone. I need everyone. It's too big not to have every art director, even down to the assistant's input. It's like you need help. You need, like, building that train. The art directors, Peters was fantastic. Like, you need everyone's,
Enthusiasm and excitement.
yeah, exactly. And
Yeah.
it's too hard otherwise.
Mm.
It actually worries me because now I don't really want to go anywhere without the same team, which
Oh, that's
and it also
fantastic.
has to be a big film. So, and in the present film climate, that's a bit tricky.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh,
It's
well, hopefully
interesting
it won't
because,
be
like,
long.
honestly, when the train actually happened, and Chris, I remember going to see Chris when he had the train on the board. Actually, Nathan, I don't think I've ever told this. I went, "Are you really going to build that? Are we really going to build it?" He was like, "Well, yeah, but I think we are." I said, "Really?" And anyway, about 20 weeks later, there it was. This green, amazing mechanical automaton, like just rolling around the rails right through a cornfield. I don't think I've ever seen anything quite like it.
Well, it's
No,
actually it
amazing. Talk
was,
about the train. It's absolutely fascinating, about logistics of actually getting, not only designing something as impressive as that, but actually having it practical.
I mean, you can't not have a practical train. I mean, let's talk about trains. Like they're so cinematic. Like, you talk about like doing car shots on low loaders or against LED, and then you talk about a train in the landscape. There's nothing like it. It's emotional. So I knew we had that. Well, it was in the script. We had to have a train, but we had to have a running train. And I think Mark was against me building a train. Mark Black. But then he suddenly realized, oh no, it's a piece of Americana. It's like, of course, we put it it was a winter wheat field. I would have loved corn. We grew that as well. And Paul Colbert, who built the train or the engines, construction did all the framework and the metal work and the panels. He built the chassis and the wheels. But the train, I mean, story-wise, what is the wizard? He's an illusionist. So I'll just back up. He's an illusionist. He comes from turn of the century, carpetbagging, illusion. So who is he? He's the man who worked with the orange tree, the growing orange tree, and that's a watchmaker. That's all metal, and it's trickery and it's automatons, and his illusion is through mechanics, but small mechanics, not industrial revolution mechanics. And so he has to have a wind up, he has to have a clockwork train. I mean, we have to do a clockwork train without the guy doing this. So we can't have steam. I remember Ben Collins, supervising art director, saying, because I wanted it 22 foot high, and Ben was saying, Are you sure you want it at 22 foot high? And he stuck a full size elevation. He printed out a giant elevation of the train on the set deck warehouse. It must have taken him hours. Well, I'm sure the assistants did it. And and we went down there. It's like, oh yeah, that's a bit big, isn't it? And it was like a 150-foot engine, and it was like, it's like fair enough. And so I looked up the biggest steam engine in America, and it was 16 foot high. It's like, let's go with 16. But all I really wanted was those big wheels with Galinda or Alphabet in front of them, totally framing them. So we and Paul Corbel construction. That trains was I saw it slowly going together in the field. It was we built it next to Emerald City because that was the only ground that had enough gravel to take the way. And it was it was a lot of the drafts people who found the panel detail because it had to have a romance to it, a femininity to it. The round doors, it was a good mix of everyone in the art department. Just it's like, okay, we know how to make it, we got all the panels, but now we need the detail. And actually, the back of it was always a big cutout because I always saw that you had two carriagemen on the back. Not that I don't think I went to Taswell to say, have you got any of those crazy Emerald City guards? And he said, no, I can't put them on anyone because I'm getting a lot of flack from production on the breathability. But the back was like supposed to be like a Louis XIV carriage with two, because it's supposed to be like this, this sort of feminine French train, So anyway, again, lots of good fun, and we made it.
It was nice when you said about where the station was built. It was just up the road from the Emerald City. Was over the summer as each of the sets were actually made, and each set had its own culture. Munchkin Land and with like the tulips and how cloth was woven and how it was dyed, and then like the Emerald City being like this amusement park and like the train and Shiz itself. What was extraordinary, as for what I do, for what we all do, is there were all these little dusty roads which actually connected each of the spaces across these old fields, and you could walk from almost place to place in Oz, like you were really truly there. I mean, we built all these places, well, not me, but Nathan and Paul, and and then I actually added to it, but you really felt like you were somewhere over the rainbow. You were not in Kansas anymore, and it was amazing. That feeling of when you're outside a stage door and you go through the door and then you're magically transported into like another place. And Nathan spoke about you're the backings of the Wizard of Oz. These places were really real. They existed, and being able and having the privilege to walk amongst them along these little dusty roads. So you'd go to Munchkin Land, then you'd walk around and like you're going to Shiz. It was incredible, really incredible.
I mean, the scale of it is almost unimaginable for most people working in the industry. Talk about the logistics of physically building such large scale structures on the back lot, like, Munchkin Land and Shiz University. I mean, the scale is epic. How do you actually physically go about building that?
As Paul Hayes used to say to me about Shiz, because we were very much up against it with Shiz, because we decided they have to go by boat, we had to build a water tank inside the set, and that obviously cut access for any machinery to get to. I mean, it just compiled the problems. So I always remember Paul saying to me, because he sort of always over the years he's calmed me down, but this time it was like we used to walk with our wellies up to our knees in mud where the tank was supposed to be. It'd be like, Paul, we've only got 8 weeks left. How are we going to get this done? And he'd look at me and go, It's only four walls. It's only four walls, Nathan. It's only four. It's like, no, it's not. It's not four walls. And he would like, I'm going to get it done. And I mean, listen, this goes back to that those construction teams who are they're so well organized, and you know the quantity of plaster sheets you need out there, the quantity of tube, the quantity of flattage. It has to work with precision and the trucking to get it out there. It all has to work. So if you don't have that team, that's not going to work. Doesn't matter how good the sculptors are, it just doesn't come together. The foremen that have to run it, they have to make sure all the bits are lined up, ready to go in. It's a military operation, and it goes back to team. You have to. There's no way I would have attempted that without Mark Seath and Paul Hayes, and Paul Caldwell and Lee, Ben Collins. You can only attempt that with those teams. And yeah, it got sticky out there. I mean, it was like, Munchkin Land was a warm up, and that was tricky because we were, and we have the weather. We're building outside in winter, which doesn't help. Emerald City got to spring, it was sunny, and once we broke the back of, so we started with Munchkin Land, and Rod, the art director, was out there permanently in his wellies, and the way we did that was we used those embankments to be our backings. They went up to 30 foot, and they're grass, so they gradually go away from the village and create perspective, and then you put a little weavy hump on the top. And it feels like the tulip lands that we planted in Norfolk are just beyond it. So second unit could transfer us between the sets. So all that worked perfectly. I knew the shapes of the houses needed, they needed vertical, they needed horizontal, they needed interest. So I loved all the funnels and the thatch funnels. And then the greens department, we'd say, oh, the thatching's a bit boring. So let's put flowers. And they happen to be growing 600,000 tulips in a glass house just in case. So, you work. And then that was one set. So it's like, okay, we're on course for that. That's going to work. And then we had Shiz, which was the mammoth task of both films. Which was this architecture. The architectural language, unfortunately, didn't make for a speedy build because you're doing Venetian, you're doing Americana, you've got columns from, Italy, Portuguese tiles, you got, so then you've got onion domes, Slavic onion domes, so with shingles. And so we were pushing and pushing, and I had to we ended up at 50 foot on the back facade because I really wanted to get it in camera, or mostly in camera. And I wanted to link the courtyard. I think the fact that I wanted to link the courtyard with the exterior tank, so the transitions were real and in camera. So, and one became a backing for the other. One becomes a backing to the other. So it works as one set. It's again, it's nothing new. John Box would have done it. So, you know what I mean? It's old school filmmaking, which relates to why there's a nostalgia for that connects with the audience, I think. And so,
it's really interesting because like Shiz, when we actually got to Shiz, and it was the day we actually shot there, we all got there really early. John was going to get there really early. I think I got there at 6 in the morning, and there was a sunrise that came right through the gate across the water, and it struck right through the courtyard where I was standing, where there were these olive trees which stood either side of like a podium. And for this one moment, I was there, and we'd had the boats built in Prague, and we'd had them then actually held the sails made, and they were there. And for this one moment, there was almost very few crew. Nathan came, and we just actually stood there, and the set was finished, and this push to get it all done. It all actually comes together in last like 24 hours. And it was this magical moment. I went, oh, we really are in the most amazing place. I really feel like I'm standing in a real place. I'm standing in Shiz, I'm standing in Oz. And it was a real, you could pinch yourself because you really felt like, yeah, you're over the rainbow again, right?
Yeah. Here's what I learned. never build three big back lots. Don't start a land war in Asia, and don't...
I mean, you clearly had a big budget. You know, the scale is enormous, and I think I know the answer to this. Was there enough money to do what you needed to do?
No, of course not.
Or time? Was there enough money or
No.
time to do what you needed to
I
do?
mean, one affects the other, and doesn't matter what size of budget you're on, you're going to push the limits. I think every designer, I've met one who doesn't want to go over budget and can't. So, I mean, it came to one of the reasons I like Mars Heath and Paul Hayes, because they both came to me with Emerald City was the last set, and frankly the most important. And they come to me, they came to me and said, "We spent too much on shiz. We're going to have to make some cuts in Emerald City." I was like, "No," and then it was like, then we sat down. This is why it's so good to work with a team. It's like, well, what can we do? And we looked at the plans, and then Paul or Mark said, well, we build the interiors first. We've got all these columns and flattage and windows. And I said, well, okay, great. Strike everything we have that we can strike and move it up to the field around Emerald City and lay it all out, these big 35-foot windows and columns. And I said, we are going to build the set out of parts, and then we're going to fill in with, with really the White City Sullivan decorative tiles, but Aussian tiles. And we're going to make a couple of molds, and we're going to fill all the gaps with Americana tiles from the White City in an Aussian pattern. And so it became quite simple. We just needed to make thousands of tiles and stand them. So when we first went around the city, it was like bits of old set. And then it was like, okay, now we have to make it. So it became a sort of sculpture job. We knew the plan we had to get to, and I couldn't shrink it. And that one of the reasons we brought the train into Emerald City is because I don't want to build a train station. That's a waste. You know how you read scripts and it's always like we got to get to a train station and we walk out of it. And it's like, how are we going to do an Aussian train station for 10 seconds? How are we going to spend the money on that? So then it was like, of course, we take a giant archway, and we pull the train in, but we pull the train in high so it fills the arch. And so you have this upper area and this giant arch. And actually in the White City, the Sullivan Arch was the transport museum. So I figured there's a nod to Americana and the train is there. And then of course the problems arise. Like we got to get the crazy 30, 50-ton train, 12 feet up in the air. I was actually standing there when we broke the train in two, and one of the best crane drivers I've ever seen lifted the train parts on and slid them down the tunnel. And it was done with such precision.
Mm.
I mean, originally I was saying, well, Paul, can't we just lay more tracks and drive the train into Emerald City? And of course they looked at me like, yeah, aren't you busy?
Seems like an obvious solution. And that kind of Lee's kind of touched on it, but when you're on such a big production and time is so tight and you're just focused on getting things done, do you ever get the chance to stop and take it all in and take stock of what you've achieved and look at the things you've done and go, wow, we've actually done this? Or are you just so focused on the next set?
We got to enjoy them occasionally, particularly the Emerald City. The sun came out. It was the last set. We felt like we got over the finish line. But up to that point, no. we had to keep on going. We kept on going. But what was amazing was John and Alice and Mark Platt, everyone was so appreciative of the work. It was, and it kind of drove you a bit, well, you drove yourself kind of hard. I thought, oh, everyone's loving it, so we'll go the extra length. We can, it brought the best out in you, and and that's the thing. That's my big takeaway of the whole thing of working on, with John, Wicked, and Mark was actually I came out probably a better set decorator actually because of it, you know. So oh, it's kind of all rather tearful.
No, it's fantastic. It's so lovely. It's so lovely to hear. It's really, it's fantastic. And just very quickly talking about we've touched on VFX versus practical. That collaboration between VFX and art department is so crucial. And I know VFX supervisors would completely disagree with me when I say that the puppet head could only have been practical. It's so important that it was, and the character that you get from physically manipulating something rather than it being a digital model. How did you work with VFX department to kind of carve up who does what, and how did that process work?
Well, I think Pablo and his team, I know Framestore. I don't know the Lucasfilms very well. ILM, sorry, it's not Lucas anymore. But I know Framestore, I know the environment team. So we knew we had to sit down and figure out, okay, the Emerald City, take this Emerald City, has to get more transparent as you go up. So, and we knew that if we said it was more solid at the base, that would give us a chance to build a set that wasn't made out of horribly expensive materials. So, but we still had to design it. I think the key to the relationship is understanding in the art department that we have to design everything to its entirety in the art department. So we kept a team running who would just extend everything. So visual effects could understand that, and it takes the pressure off them. So the push and pull, you have to work as one. Again, if you have old relationships, it's much easier because you understand what they need. And I think today we've become closer with visual effects than we've ever been because our technology is the programs we use. We all understand it now. There's no mystery to visual effects anymore, and there's no mystery to set building. It's just choices, and I think again it comes down to instinct as a designer. It's like, no, you can't do that with visual effects. Like you might have all the pressures of saying, well, we can't afford to do it. You have to do it. These aren't acceptable answers because you know what you really have to do. And therefore you need a producer like Mark Platt who you go and explain it to, and he says, okay. And he doesn't want to get on a plane and go and talk to the studio about why we have to do this. So, because his instincts, so how do you explain that to someone? So I think, I think this is where film is. It's just I have a closer relationship with VFX people than I've ever had in the past.
My kind of
Yeah,
question
sorry.
is like, with the head is what's behind the curtain? We have to wait until part two, folks.
And how was, just from a logistic point of view, working on part two, was that kind of right alongside part one? Was there some sort of time space between the two? Did you know what you were doing in part two while you were doing part one?
Yeah, one shoot, one long shoot. So that becomes, it's a marathon.
Yeah.
Well, those things are tiring, and you have to find time for yourself. You have to find space and quietness. I know we talked about, did you get to enjoy the set? Well, I'd often stay up up with the big sets and enjoy it after everyone went home. Usually with Paul Hayes, actually, then we go to. But you need, this is a long task, and it's long for everyone. And it's not the most ideal way to do it, but it does mean your budget can go over two films, and it does allow you to do larger things. Without the two films, it wouldn't have worked for the budget on the singular film. So the story it requires two films. And I have to say, that second film, John Chu, I have to say, well done, and Mark Platt. It's an adventure. It makes you realize how epic the collision of Wicked and Wizard of Oz really is.
Wow.
I'm sure people can't wait to see it. I mean, it's fantastic. I've had so much fun talking to you guys. It's just the way you've talked about the job. It obviously didn't really feel like a job for you when you were doing it. It sounds absolutely magical. And it's been really, really lovely having you talk about such a fantastic masterclass in production design. So I think let's wrap this up. And all I can say is thank you so much, Lee Sandales and Nathan Crowley, for your epic work. Thank you.
No problem. Nice to see you guys.
Yeah, thanks very much.